I started to kind of connect the social and political problems of San Francisco to the dominant spirituality. And I come
Mm,
from a small town in rural Pennsylvania that was, I would say, implicitly, maybe not explicitly Christian. I think in America, explicit Christianity is becoming rare. It's not really the mainstream anymore. I think it used to be,
right.
but not anymore. So I come from this small town that people like to say is, 50 years behind socially, right? It's just kind of in the middle of the woods, and there's this implicit Christian culture here. But I was able to, growing up there and then moving to San Francisco, I was able to juxtapose the two. And I was like, well, people where I come from, they're in monogamous relationships, they form families, um, they, have an ethic of serving other people and helping one another. Like, what's different here, right? And then in San Francisco, the society is seriously falling apart. I mean, you can see it on the streets. People are addicted to drugs and
Hmm.
homeless, but also even within the millennial demographic in San Francisco, there's all these problems. People aren't forming families, they're doing a lot of drugs, partying all the time, kind of refusing to grow up. They're kind of trying to minimize their responsibilities on every level, outsourcing all the daily tasks of life, you know, and I just started to realize that these things were connected, that the political and the spiritual are connected.
Again, that's a lot of self-awareness, but just to be aware of what's going on. That you don't. This is not very common. So kudos to you. I've in my own experience with some of the types that you were kind of referring to, the uh, new age types. There's always this veneer where they announce, we're for peace and we're all about love, and be yourself and do whatever makes you happy. There's a lot of self worship that's implicit in it. They don't come out and say worship the self, although maybe maybe some of the pagan types do. I don't know, but it's just kind of in there. But there's always this veneer of love and peace and happiness, and just under the surface is like self-loathing, emotional turmoil, and chaos. Really, which chaos is, leftism is chaos in my opinion. But is that kind of the thing that you experienced as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Not only was the society, um, I feel like San Francisco gave me this little microcosm of like, here's what society would be like if the dominant spirituality was spiritual, not religious, right? Like this is what it does to society. And not only was there societal level turmoil and chaos, the crime, the drug use, the sort of lack of care for your neighbor, that sort of thing. But there's also the impact on the individual. And I did find that, people who were subscribing to this type of spirituality were often mentally unwell. They were often
Hmm.
anxious. It kind of sets you up as God, right? There's this idea that you can manifest whatever you want, that you're the creator.
Yes.
So
Yes.
instead of co-creating with God and, it sets you up as this like little god, right? And everything is about serving you, and do what serves you, and manifest your desires, all this sort of thing. And I think deep down people know that they're not god. They know that they don't possess supreme power and control, but these types of new age spiritualities tell them that they do, and then that creates a cognitive dissonance and an anxiety. And so you see a lot of people struggling with mental illness, anxiety, depression, and things
Hmm.
like that when they're engaged in the new age spirituality. And there's like practices in new ageism that can help to sort of, you know, temper that. You'll meditate, you'll do yoga, and that can give you like a sort of temporary peace. But then when you step off the mat, it's like, well, how do I live my life? How do I order my life? How do I create a life that feels meaningful and is oriented towards the good, and has me feeling like I'm actually serving something higher than myself, right? And that's what Christianity really gives you. But that's just very lost in San Francisco. I mean, people are really searching. I think people there really are searching for God. And what they're finding is well, they're not really religions in the traditional sense, but these ideas that actually lead them away from God and closer towards the self. And that leads to a
Hmm.
lot of inner turmoil and societal turmoil. And it's very libertarian too. Like it comes back to politics too. There's this ethos in San Francisco that do whatever you want as long as it doesn't like, as long as it's not like violence towards somebody else, right? Just, do whatever is good for you. And we're seeing this idea all throughout our society right now that you should just, if it's okay for you, then it's moral, right? And this sort of
Right.
moral relativity that maybe it's not for you, but it's okay for someone else, so it's fine. And
Mhm.
this, we've kind of gotten rid of this idea of that there's an objective morality that, we don't really get to choose our own morality because we don't control how our actions impact others, right? So, I think one of the best examples of this is like open relationships and people
Mhm.
rejecting monogamy. They say, well, this serves me, and this is what makes me happy, and there's no concern about the impact on other people to, refuse to commit, to be sexually promiscuous, and to kind of put those hedonistic desires as your highest value at the expense of other people's emotions.